And it's a very good morning to the Gelding. Gelding racing returns to Flemington today with the Australian Guineas. Weather might be a little bit of a problem, maybe.
Good morning, Professor. Good morning, listeners. Flemington, as I'll just say it again, the best track in the Southern Hemisphere. But getting a bit of a light drizzle out here in Caulfield South. Professor, what about yourself?
Yeah, a little bit of drizzle out in the sticks this morning too.
Yeah. One good thing about Flemington, though, a little bit of rain like that shouldn't really affect it. So hopefully there's not too much wind around. So all horses, get their chance, which is a good thing about Flemington.
Yeah, only 2 millimetres predicted, Gelding. So as you say, it shouldn't trouble a track like Flemington.
No. And what do you think, Professor? The rail, where should it be today?
Well, the rail should be in the true position, but it's 2 metres out. So
we'll go back for the true next week, will it, for Newmarket Day?
Well, if this was Caulfield, the rail would be in the true position today.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, Gelding.
Say nothing else on that, Professor.
No, we had our wins last week, Gelding. 10 race card today at Flemington, Gelding. The first at 12:15, the last at 5:35. Feature race 8, the Australian Guineas, a Group 1 for $1 million, Gelding. Gelding, some other group races don't have $1 million. They have less, but they might be more time honoured. What's going on there?
Time for the soapbox, Professor. Can I get up on it?
Please get up on it, Gelding.
Oh, here we have, as we discussed last week, I think all Group 1 races should be worth $1 million. At the moment, it seems quite common. Some are worth a lot more than that. The argument is, should all these races be Group 1s? Here we have a Group 1 3-year-old Australian Guineas, Professor, a race that's probably been invented over the last 30 years. Last week, the Melbourne Racing Club put on a time-honoured Group 1 race in the Oakley Plate, and yet could only find $750,000 for it. If you want these things to be Group 1 races, give them the appropriate prize money. And for races like the Oakley Plate, which is an open sprint race for all horses and not restricted to 3-year-olds, not restricted to do anything like that. This is a race with over 100 years history, and yet you can't even make it your main event for the day. So I think the Melbourne Racing Club's just got to lift its game on that. And on this same program, Professor, apart from having a Group 1 worth $1 million, you have an English sprint race, which is again for 3-year-olds, which is only stake winning and place. So listed and above worth $1 million. How can a restricted race for English brought horses be worth more than a Group 1 race with over 100 years of history, Professor?
Well, they're excellent questions, Gelding. But clearly we've got no idea because we have got a certain view of it. Maybe Gillan McLaughlin will tune things up and change things around, and maybe he might even listen to That's Racing and get some tips.
Yeah, let's hope so, Professor.
Oh, good to get a laugh out of you, Gelding.
Let's hope so. I was just having a look at a book called The AFL, The Boys Club. I wonder what will happen when Gil moves across.
Oh, well, he might bring some people with him.
Yeah, interesting.
All right, Gelding, the tracks are good for the rails out 2 metres. What are your 2 best bets for today's racing?
Professor, going for, again, looking for winners. Just amazed. The 2 main stables in Australia, Kieran Maher and Waller, just keep on producing horses that just keep on winning, Professor. And as we were talking before off air and that. I'm just amazed the way year after year after year, Chris Waller just has horses that keep on improving and improving, and all of a sudden become the next superstars. We've got Fangirl up in Sydney, was a fantastic win 2 weeks ago, and it now looks like being the best of its age again. And look, down here, Riff Rocket's win last week after winning the Victorian Derby was just fantastic. So, look, Professor, let's go. My first tip will be in race 6, is number 6. A horse we've been on before, Professor, Another Will. Trained by Kieran Ma, ridden by one of our favourites in Jamie Carr, who seems to be getting back into a bit of form, Professor. Seems to have put the injuries and other things behind her, and now just seems to be in a very good position and is riding fantastically. Another Will, Professor, even though a bit short, round about the $1.75, we can get. This horse has had it's a 4-year-old street boss, Professor. 5 starts for 3 wins, a second and a third. Going up in the grades, shooting for a hat-trick, Professor. 1 over 1,400 at Sandown. 1 over Caulfield in a benchmark 70. So, look, hopefully this horse can continue going through the grades, Professor. I think it may be a group horse in the making. So it will be a horse that we will be following. Again, my second pick, Professor, is the Chris Waller trained Riff Rocket. Race 8, number 1, to be ridden by Craig Williams, Professor. Around about the $2.80 mark at the moment. This horse won so impressively the other week, Professor. I had a high opinion of King Colorado, and Riff Rocket just zoomed past it, Professor, to beat it quite comfortably in the Group 3 race at Flemington. They return over the same distance, over the same venue. I can just see the same result, Professor. One of your favourite horses, V8, Professor, is also in the race. But I just think over 1,600, Riff Rocket may have its measure. And a bit worried also about the Perth horse Zip Away, number 5. But look, I think Riff Rocket could be the bet of the day, Professor. So my 2 are race 6, number 6, into race 8, number 1. And you like, Professor?
Yeah, Gelding, I'm going a little bit earlier than you. Race 2, the Flemington 2000. Now, Gelding, the Flemington 2000, without looking at the form guide, what do you reckon that race has run over? What distance do you reckon the Flemington 2000's run over?
You would hope it's run over 2,000, wouldn't you?
Exactly, Gelding.
Don't tell me it's 1,800 or 2,040.
No, not a trick question for you today, Gelding. No, it's run over 2,000 metres.
You're known for throwing a wobbly, Professor, or a question without notice.
It's a benchmark 84, Gelding. It's a Flemington track specialist. Its last 3 starts have been at the track. The last 2 starts have been very attractive, over the same distance for a win and a placing. Last Saturday, it was beaten by El Celado, who started a Group 2 at Caulfield last week, Gelding.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to like about this horse. Ridden by Damien Lane, who's one of the best jockeys going around at the moment, and the Price and Kent stable, one of our former trainers, Gelding.
Yes, Professor, one of our couple of photos up there, I think, with Price Kent in there. So
they've got an 18% win rate over their last 50, which is a career rating for them. So I like that. At $2.30 Gelding and $1.22 represents some pretty good value for punters. I think at the end of the race, at the end of the 2,000 metres, Aramco will be there.
I like it, Professor. Damien Lane is just absolutely low flying at the moment. So You can't go wrong following him, Professor. Look at his 8 rides and try to pick out the winners there. That might be a good starting point sometimes.
I totally agree with you, Gelding. My second selection's in race 5, the off-the-track sprint. It's over 1,100 metres, a 3-year-old open race for fillies. I like this one, Gelding. Race 5, Moesha, coming out of barrier 6, had 5 starts for a win and 2 placings, so a 20% win rate, 60% place rate. It's won over the distance, Gelding. It's the best rated horse in the race. Its last start, it ran 4th in the Pete Legrand Stakes, a Group 3 at Caulfield 3 weeks ago. It's also run 4th in a Group 2, Gelding, the 1,000 Guineas Prelude. And what I also like about the horse, it's 1 second up. So it's second up today. So Will Price is in the saddle, trained by our trainers, Gelding, of the current time, Moody and Coleman. And you can currently get $4.20 and $1.75. So for each way betters, Gelding, I think that's a very good investment for them.
Oh, Professor, I like it. And I'm Invincible, 3-year-old filly out of a mare, Princess Coupe, which was a group winner at Flemington. So trained by Peter Moody and Catherine Coleman, fantastic. Professor ran 4th, and I noticed the winner of that race, Estella, has gone off to the $1 million sprint race today. So they must think that's a horse in pretty good form. So, yeah, I like it, Professor.
All right, Gelding, my 2 selections, race 2, horse 7, Aramco, and race 5, horse 5, Moesha. Now, let's turn to the very, very successful Professor's Parlay. We steered away from the Premier League last week, went to the NBA, and we had some rich pickings.
Yes, well done, Professor. Good stuff.
So Mr. Brightside looked after us again.
Right. Hasn't it been doing it for ages? It must be getting the tide back carrying us around.
I'd like to be as certain of winning tats, Gelding.
Oh, it's been fantastic for us, and good to see you back on the board, Professor, last week when you left that little game over in England off the off the selection board.
All right, Gelding. Well,
so
this week
I'm waiting with interest, Professor. Being the sweater coming down.
This week, Gelding, the agreed bet of the day is, and we had some fairly lively discussion about the agreed bet of the day. There's two in the running.
Yes.
And we finally selected race 8, horse 1, Riff Rocket. But if you wanted to put your other tip, Gelding, another will in, we still would think that the parlay will get up.
We thought so, and we also added
Fangirl,
trained Fangirl up in Sydney, Professor.
So you can have three possible parlays today, Gelding.
Yes. Well, what are the other 2, Professor?
All right. Well, Gelding, we're going to parlay Riff Rocket and Premier League. I'm not looking at.
Wow. Where's that?
Gelding, we're going to go back to the NBA barrel.
I like it.
We're going to go for the Los Angeles Clippers to beat the Washington Wizards. Los Angeles, 4th in the West. They've won 37 of 57, so 64% win rate. Average points for 117, average points against 112. Washington Wizards, very disappointing season, Gelding. They're last in the East Conference. They've only won 9 games out of 59, so they only win 15% of the times, and I don't think today's going to be one of them. They only score an average of 114 points a game, Gelding. They allow in 124 for points against. That's the worst in the NBA, Gelding, the worst. So
let's hope it continues.
Yeah, I like Los Angeles Clippers today, and we'll parlay that into the Cleveland Cavaliers to beat the Detroit Pistons. Cleveland Cavaliers are 2nd in the East. They've won 38 of 58, so a 65% win rate. They only have 109 points on average scored against them, Gelding, so they've got one of the better defences in the league.
Good.
And we'll parlay that against the Detroit Pistons, who are 14th out of 15 in the East. They've only won 9, another 15% win rate, and they can only score 112 a game, Gelding. That's not going to get any more. And 121 points against, 4th worst out of 30 teams. So we've got 2 teams we're betting against who haven't got very good defences, Gelding.
Beautiful. We like that, Professor. And juicy odds, Professor?
Yes, today Gelding, the win parlay currently showing 3-1 and the place parlay showing 2-1.
Fantastic, Professor. And what are we at the moment? What are we around the 75%, are we? 70%?
Yes, Gelding, we're about at the 75% mark. That's right.
It's not bad.
No.
Bad.
And hopefully we'll go again today.
Hopefully, Professor.
All right, Gelding. Well, that's racing for this Saturday, and until next week.